always, your host, Nelson Rodriguez Jr., author and creator of Montana Method. Today, very special guest for you, Victoria, a.k.a. She's Got the Verb. I love her content. I connected with her through another friend of mine, Day. If you're listening to this, thank you very much for indirectly connecting us. She's got some pretty cool content that I really enjoy. That's why I invited her on. We're going to get into, how she got into the whole content game, everything she does, everything she's involved in, her path, what she plans on doing in the future, all that stuff. So stick around. You won't want to miss it. Elijah, kick that intro.
I've been out here hustling all my life. Every day we get into it. Really out here in these streets. That's day and night. Like there's nothing to it. When I was going through it, dog, I never got your call. I never asked for nothing, no. But now I want it all. Promise I'ma do it. Came from rags to riches. Rags to riches. Came from rags to riches. Rags to riches. Came from rags.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, Nelson. Thank you for having me here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Wonderful. So just another day in paradise here in Miami.
I like how you color coordinated.
Thank you.
It's the perfect,
With the backdrop. Hey, we're on the Montana Method, right?
Right. I like that. That's cool.
Yes.
Oranges, how colors, there's something called neural associations. I don't know if you know what that is.
Sure.
But neural associations is when in your mind, you associate something with something.
Okay.
Right? So, for example, when you think of orange, the color orange, what do you think of?
Happiness.
I think of the sunset.
Okay.
That's a neural association. And everybody's answer to a question is going to be different, right?
Definitely.
So, for example, I associate going to the gym with getting better as a human being.
For sure.
What do you associate going to the gym to?
Hard work.
See, it's different. And then someone else will probably say with pain.
Pain.
Or with, oh my God, it was suffering.
No pain, no gain.
Right. So it's funny how throughout our lives, we kind of just pick up these meanings for these things. Yeah. And in reality, the meaning is subjective. It doesn't really have a meaning. Like a color can have a meaning.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
It's what we attribute to the color.
100%.
Of course. I mean, getting into that neural associations, another level of that is the chakras, right? And so the orange is is it the solar plexus, which is creativity, or
right.
is that the yellow?
You have the crown, the throat, the solar plexus, the pelvis, and then after that I get lost.
Sure. 7 colors
right.
of the rainbow.
Right.
But yeah, it's a nice day to be here. I feel very privileged to be here today. Seeing your dedication to your platform.
Thank you.
Inviting a lot of interesting people that are here to learning from each other. And at the end of the day, that's what this social media world is now. The platform for us to have more conversations, connect with people, like-minded interests, that hustler mentality that is associated with your brand. That's something very true here to Miami natives. A lot to, people from the Cuban culture, people that have, immigrants as well, building a new life here. I mean, I identify with the Cuban culture, of course, that's my heritage, but that's a new topic nowadays. I'm American, right? But a lot of times it's, what's your background? I'm, Cuban, but American, right? And that's a conversation that people are having nowadays as well, which is interesting.
I like, what I like about America is that we're all American, but it's always like, oh, he's Cuban. Oh no, he's Jamaican. Oh no, he's Canadian. Or oh no, he's Mexican.
Absolutely.
I find it interesting that we're like the only country on the planet that kind of, oh no, you're from here. Like, no, we're from here.
Yeah.
But the second you find out that your parents are from somewhere else, you're automatically like that,
We identify, yeah, of course. And I mean, America is a melting pot. I mean, Miami now is the hottest city in the country.
Possibly in the world,
Yeah, possibly in the world, California has been...
on a bit of a downturn.
It's a little bit washed ashore
Yeah,
these days.
to say the least.
Yeah, from there, where have people gone? New York, and New York is still what the Big Apple. What do they say? Is it the city of blinding lights?
Yeah, that never sleeps.
The city that never sleeps.
Even though I disagree, because I think Las Vegas is the city that never sleeps for real. Like Las Vegas is 24 hours a day, nonstop. There's always something to do. You can always get into trouble. Like Las Vegas is, for me, I've been to both places multiple times, and for real, I think that they should transfer that nickname to Las Vegas.
To Las Vegas.
Yeah.
It's been a while since going to Vegas, but in terms of these metropolitan cities where a lot of the talent goes to create businesses and grow, and now New York, how many people are moving from New York here to Miami now?
Most of the city.
I mean, I heard something like 1,200 people.
At one point, at our height, 1,000 people a day were moving to South Florida.
Is that what it was, right?
1,000 people a day.
So
it's a lot. And that happened for arguably 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's insane the drastic change that Miami has gone through just in the last 3 to 4 years.
Absolutely.
The gravity of it, people don't really understand it because you have two versions of Miami. You have the people that are moving here that live in their own bubble, right? They live across the bridge in Brickell and in downtown and in the fictionalized version of what everybody thinks the entire city of Miami is.
Right.
And then you have the rest of us that live in the rest of Miami. You could live in Coral Gables or Westchester.
The suburbs.
Hialeah, maybe Doral or something. And it's a totally different city.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with Brickell or any of that stuff.
Not at all.
And I think it's funny how the world thinks we are 5% of the city.
Right.
Like 5% of the city makes up for all of us. And then, all the women are sexually promiscuous. All the men are scumbags. Everyone.
If you focus on South Beach.
I mean, right? No, and then South Beach is a whole other animal. South Beach is like international. And before the pandemic, South Beach was always like that. You had a lot of Eastern Europeans. You had like the Slavics, like a lot of Bulgarians, a lot of Serbians.
Sure.
You have, Western. You have French people, Italians. You have, all kind. Like it's
Absolutely.
a big. South Beach is like not. It's a different animal for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, 100%. And people are moving from New York. They're moving now to Brickell. I mean, the saturation is major.
At this point, it looks exactly like New York.
Right. I mean, I live in the Kendall area, and it takes me 50 minutes to drive from Brickell to the Kendall area. And I mean, it's just...
The traffic has gotten horrendous.
Terrible.
Horrendous.
Terrible. And, the rate of living, I mean, the houses have doubled in prices over the past couple years. I was fortunate enough to, many years working, savings, and be able to get a nice home. And, I tell people all the time, and I mean, back then, maybe it was a bit more relevant, 5% down, it's very possible, but now
it's like
these the
5% down is like a year's salary.
It's another level.
It's crazy.
It is. So, I guess.
What year did you buy your house?
2021, right
before everything got really crazy. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And
yeah, you were fortunate. And I remember in 2019, bro, I can never forget this. I remember in 2019, family, you know how Cubans are. No, todo está carísimo. Everything's super expensive. And me thinking to myself, I was like, wait a second. Hold on. When they got here, everything is way more expensive now. So that means this is like my youth, right? So that means everything's going to be way more expensive later.
100%.
This is the cheapest it's ever going to be. Bro, and when I had that realization, bro, I'm going to tell you a story I don't think I've ever told anybody this story on the podcast. Around the corner from my house, there's a whole 3 blocks of like fourplexes. You know those one floor fourplexes that are like 1-1s or 2-1s?
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
Que están juntos, they're like together.
Yeah.
It's all like one building.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was about ready like to really have enough money to buy a house.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, man, why should I buy a house when I could maybe buy something that has a couple units and then rent them out? And
Absolutely.
I'm not even trying to make money. If I live for free in Miami, that's a blessing, right?
There you go.
And especially now, like in today's age. Bro, so I go on Zillow and I look up multifamily or whatever, and I zoom in like my area because I wanted to stay.
Sure.
Bro, one block away, they were selling one, a fourplex for like 415,000. Bro, I was like, what? I want to go talk to these people tomorrow.
There you go.
I
That
called,
was recently.
No, that was 2019.
Ah.
I call them the next day. The next day, mind you, the property had been on the market like a week, not even. I call the guy the next day. He's like, no, we already have it on the contract. I was like, damn.
For sure. That would have been great.
Bro.
Yeah.
Fast
honestly.
forward to today.
What can you find in Miami?
I was
that?
like, bro, I would have gotten a fourplex for 400 grand with that low interest rate. And,
right.
oh, man.
Absolutely.
But, you know, as our people say, you know, cuando está pa ti, nadie te lo quita. Like, when it's for you, it's for you. When it's not, it's not.
100%.
Timing in life. I saw this reel recently. I follow a lot of these, like, inspirational pages.
Of course.
And the guy talked about timing. And he's like, bro, timing, you know, we always seem to, like, in relationships, right? We always seem to think that we meet the right person at the wrong time, or, like, we meet the wrong person, but then we think it's the right person at the right time, and then that turns into a whole thing.
Right.
And then the guy at the end of the clip was like, bro, you're wrong. Timing is nothing. The right people when they're the right people and they really, like, love you, they'll throw away their plans and follow you wherever you're going. Your plans become irrelevant. It's not about where you're going. It's about the people you're around and the visions you have. And if they're strong enough, you'll stick together.
Absolutely.
Dude, that was like...
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, timing definitely does have a factor.
For sure.
But definitely the right people. It doesn't matter. You can have, certain friends for a certain amount of years. And then, connect with like-minded people in a shorter amount of time, and those people can support you a lot more than people you could have learned, you could have known for a lot longer. So timing, definitely. I mean, I have a 3.5-year-old and an 8-month-old, and I had my 3.5-year-old at 25. And at that time, I had actually just moved into an apartment in the Coconut Grove area. And it was like the time of my life. I was like, I mean, it's like prime time, right? And I had the blessing of my son, and it was exactly what I needed. And now, 3.5 years later, I have my little girl, and
That's it. You got the set.
I got the set, I'm praying, if we have one more, that could be great, but raising kids is tough.
Yeah. It's not easy.
I definitely see my parents in a different way now, because it'd be nice to keep going out, having the Miami life, but now we have that life in a different way. And so being able to have these experiences around town, see what's up in nice restaurants, and be able to do that as a family, that's what we're enjoying now. So that's actually a blessing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. After you have kids, I think that's when you really appreciate your parents, because when we're kids, we're like these rebellious little brats. And, mom doesn't understand. These people don't understand. Especially in Miami, being, Hispanic kids, like, you have that kind of fear of God of your mom, right? You're just terrified of your mother.
It's good to have that.
At least in my family, because my dad wasn't really around that much. But, and then obviously in other families, I hear, when your dad just gives you the look and he's just like, that's enough to make you stop misbehaving and just sit still and be like, all right, that's enough.
You know what you got to do.
Yeah. But there's always that side of you where like, man, they're always so hard on me. Like, no, like, that's not fair. And then now you grow up and you have kids, and it's like, bro.
You realize it's for your own good, But, with my little boy, I always encourage him with his sister, because they warn me, oye, los celos de los niños, when a new kid comes to the house, make sure, hey, take the guests, have the older child take the guests to see the newborn, and so they feel like they're protecting and taking care of the little baby, instead of being
competing
ignored.
for attention,
Right. So that's been great. And my son, he says, he goes like this, give me my baby. I want to hold my baby, and it's beautiful. I tell everyone all the time the gift of having a child is really the greatest blessing in the world. You can accomplish everything on this earth. You can reach the highest mountains, but that gift is a privilege, and it makes everything else, it doesn't compare to the beauty of having your children, these lights, these souls that you're responsible for, and understanding also that they are individuals. As little as they are, they're their own person. They have their own path, and I always say I want to hold their hand lightly, because I want them to want to come back, and know that I'll support them, but they definitely, have to learn. And like we said, that rebelliousness it's natural. It's human nature, and the discipline, that's what takes you to that next place. And no pain, no gain. That suffering, those lessons, those failures, those are the things that make you get up again and try again and just get better every time you try.
I would argue that parents learn from their kids as much as kids learn from their parents.
Yeah.
Parenting is, I don't have kids, but looking back now, I see as an adult, I can recall these moments I had with my parents, and I realized that they were in the middle of figuring it out. Like,
of course,
there's no magic book where you can read and be like, hey, here are all the answers,
Right.
Maybe if you're talking spiritually, you could, whatever religion you believe in, whether you're a Muslim or a Christian, like the Quran or the Bible, I get it, but that's just like a guide.
Yeah.
That's not the answer. That's a guide to hopefully give you some wisdom to help you in life. But ultimately, the answer, there's never a right answer. There's always like so many possible ways to do something. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I looking back, I remember my mom, especially, like, she was just doing the best she could. That's why I talk about it all the time. I don't blame my parents. Like, there's moments where I think, looking back, all three of us can look back, like my mom, my dad, and me, and we could probably all be like, bro, you screwed that up pretty bad. But, they're human. They're flawed, just like I am. So who am I to judge them,
Of course. And I recently have done some self-exploration and in those types of regards. For example, have you looked into near-death experiences before?
Yeah.
Right? And that's interesting.
Very
People
interesting.
that
you can delve into a whole rabbit hole there.
They go beyond and they come back. And an interesting point there is that there's many different paths that we can take, almost like imagining like a map structure of the brain, and the paths that you frequent more often are more deeply engraved. And so that's why I kind of go back to those paths, but similarly in life path type, it's those stories have shared that there's many different paths in the map of your life, but those main points, it doesn't matter which other routes you take, you're almost destined to go back to those main crucial turning points. And I think that's neat to know that, of course there's room for error,
right?
And knowing that, you are here for a reason, and those main points are, you're going to ultimately get there, because it's what's meant for you. So
do you believe in destiny?
Yes.
So do I.
It's an interesting concept,
It's very interesting because it's hard to accept that there may be a predetermined path for your life.
Right.
And at the same time, there's so many moments you can look back and say, man, if I didn't make this choice, this wouldn't have happened. My life would be totally different.
Right.
So I have a friend of mine that he works here with me, and we talk about this all the time. He's like, oh, I don't believe in destiny. And then the funny thing is, he's super spiritual and super into kind of surrender and accepting that, like, working on yourself and looking deep within for answers and not looking to the outside world to extend. Like, he's a pretty spiritual guy.
Right.
But when it comes to this thing of destiny, he's like, bro. So my thing is, okay, you don't believe in destiny, but bro, what about the stories that are written, like the path? You know, somebody like an epic story like Nelson Mandela or like Gandhi. The things that happen in their life, yeah, it's because of the choices they made and the actions they took, obviously. But bro, you can't write those stories.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting concept, and I've only recently as well, with this near death experience type of research and curiosity, learned a bit more about that concept of destiny. And it, to your friend, for example, if the idea is that you almost decided what your experience would be here before you arrived, that's an interesting way of looking at it.
Right.
You imagine that you chose to go through those hardships. You chose to go through those learning lessons. You chose your family. You chose all these experiences for a reason, and really for your soul journey, and to just be able to be that greater light. And I had someone tell me, someone close to me recently, and, speaking of light, and basically that how much light you have within you is also how much dark you can have as well, and so it's a constant battle here on Earth, right? But this is a school, and every day you don't know what to expect. Every day is another pop quiz, another lesson, another test. And the important thing, though, is having those guiding principles, those values that you can continue along that story of your life, of how you want that story to be, and obviously those things that you can't control, things that go wrong, all those curves, well, they're part of it. They're part of it to learn, to be able to write that beautiful, crazy story.
Agreed. It's all learning. Life is the never-ending process of figuring it out. Life is one big learning experience,
Absolutely.
And the purpose for me has become how far, like, if I've worked on myself this much and gotten this far, how much farther can I go? That's one of the questions that to this day gets me excited whenever I ask it to myself, because I didn't even think this version of me was possible once upon a time in my life.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you see that thing on Instagram that says you used to pray for times like these, so don't, when you receive challenges, don't complain. Like, you used to pray to become to get to a certain point in your life, and you had to become a certain type of person. So don't sit here and get mad when the challenges arise, because you have to go through those challenges to become that kind of person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, it's just a matter of, man. So I've been able to go through all that, and I've been able to come this far. So, like, at the end of my life, how far can I go?
Of course.
It's a pretty exciting question.
That's, something that my dad says, the sky is the limit, and Walt Disney, if you can believe it, who says that? If you can believe it, you can dream it. If you can believe it, you can do it.
If the mind can conceive it, you can achieve it. It's attested to, like, many people. I've heard it in Think and Grow Rich with, like, Napoleon Hill, and I've heard it from several people, but it's the truth. I mean, think about it. This microphone, that light, the screen, this podcast, it all started as an idea.
Absolutely.
Right? So you literally have to think about, if everything around you started as an idea, including you, right? Because you were just an idea in your parents' head before you were born, right? Then what logical explanation is there for your idea not to come into reality and become a real thing?
Of course. It's absolutely possible. It really is. And the more that you create that vision, the more that all of the elements are going to appear. And that is an absolute truth.
Right.
Definitely. You know, it's having that undeniable um, knowing somehow deep inside, knowing that um, that's gonna be
Right.
you know, and it's you know it doesn't have to be about looking in the mirror and doing these affirmations and you know cultivating that type of um, experience. It's just it's having that constant communication with your higher self, with you know um, God is what you know I believe, and it's a nonstop conversation. And you're the one always talking to yourself,
Right.
right? We're the ones that are always. I mean, it's incredible. They say that the brain is actually a limiter.
Mm.
You know,
Interesting.
and they say we only use 5% of our brain. You know, we're so grand, really, each person. You know, and I find so much value when I see people that share that authenticity that's really true to their light and to their heart. I I respect people so much when I see that shining from them, you know? And I affiliate in a certain way because um you know, so my name being Victoria, you know, and I recently, it's always been a strong name, but I've recently analyzed it a bit more, and victory only comes after defeat,
Mm.
you know, and there's been so many accomplishments, but those accomplishments are just like that image that we've seen, which is the tip of the iceberg.
Mm.
You know, everything else, every single day, every single struggle, every single waking up, getting ready, you know, there's even an idea that the key to success in accomplishing even greater things is in accomplishing the smaller things. So, for example, even something as simple as washing the dish, you know, it takes 10 minutes of your time. The same idea of making your bed in the morning, it takes 3 minutes of your time. You accomplish those things and you're ready to move on to the next task, to a bigger task. It's easier, it's less overwhelming. You know, it's more difficult to procrastinate, you know, when you accomplish those smaller things. And the idea as well, it's very easy to get lost in the nitty gritty details of accomplishing goals, but focusing on higher level tasks, you know, focusing on those 2 or 3 major items, if it's that phone call that is going to make that project move forward, those are those steps that entrepreneurs, you know, creatives, you know, being bold enough to, you know, say, I got this. And it's not even that I got this, just saying I can take that next step and I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to do that. You know, and it's a fight out here. It's a fight out here, but it's nice to find friends, like-minded people. That's something recently that I've been able to find in online recently, in this foodie group kind of scenario. So many people that are passionate about going and having a delicious bite. I used to bake when I was little, and I used to help my mom, and I would go every summer to Jersey, and it was there on a summer trip with my family that I discovered the Joy of Cooking cookbook. And my uncle, he's an Italian New Yorker, and he would make these amazing meals. I mean, he's there in top cooking level with my mom, and my mom makes some amazing meals. I mean, during COVID, the pandemic, she was every night we were in a different country. It was Italy, it was Japanese, Chinese. I mean, she's just incredible. And so he had the dinner and I would do the desserts. And my signature desserts that I learned from those visits was an epic carrot cake that, you know, you have to peel the carrots, you shred the carrots, you golden raisins. I mean, it's such an elaborate recipe. It was so satisfying to accomplish. And cream cheese, homemade cream cheese.
This is
frosting.
This is making me pretty hungry.
And I mean, it was so impressive to my family, you know, as 12 years old and doing those things. Mind you, my brother and my cousin, you know, 2 boys off playing, and so I'm there helping in the kitchen. And a New York cheesecake as well. I would make that too.
That's crazy.
And that one's tricky because you have this metal container that it's like a clip, and then you hope that it'll set. And if you open that clip sooner than it's set, it'll break apart.
Wow.
And so I have so much respect for culinary, you know, professionals, for chefs, for pastry makers. I don't like to think that anywhere is the best. I like my aunt that I would visit her in the summers. She's traveled the world. And I was fortunate enough to be able to travel with her to Turkey one year. And she would always tell me, she says, don't compare, appreciate the differences. And that's something I really carry that with me, because everybody has their own, you know, little difference. And, you know, it's now with 2 kids, I joke about this, but it's not very funny.
I mean, usually things are funny because they're true.
Right? I'm at the point right now where I almost burn anything in the oven.
That's funny. And then the kids are the guinea pigs. So if it's something that comes out great, they can eat it. Oh, Mom, this doesn't taste good. All right, I won't cook it again.
Right. So. Well, my husband cooks. And
oh, that's cool.
He since we were dating, I mean, and in a simple way, but very healthy, and he loves to even plate it in a nice way. But putting things in the air fryer, you know, just a chicken in the air fryer and a little bit of salt, and that's it. And you slice it in a nice way. You put it on a plate with some, you know, broccolini, we like a lot, in the air fryer as well. Some olive oil on top. And I mean, I was impressed. But, you know, 2 kids later, that baking and that cooking that I used to do, it's coming
handy for sure.
It'll come back. It'll come back one day. But that's why, you know, I appreciate the experiences and going to taste the foods that they make around town, and being in the restaurant industry, you know, the marketing side of the restaurant industry, and being able to share my experiences aside from just the family business.
Right.
Now, also doing that with other restaurants.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. We're going to take a quick break here from our first sponsor. We'll be right back. Alrighty, guys, taking a quick break from the podcast to bring you a word from our sponsor, Christian J. DePaz. Appreciate him for coming through. He offers a phenomenal service. Guys, you know I'm a big promoter of entrepreneurship, owning a company, starting a business, doing your own thing, and chasing your own dreams. But as the old saying goes, it takes money to make money. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Christian J. DePaz and what he does. He gets funding for new and startup businesses. Christian, tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you so much, bro, for the opportunity to come inside your podcast and help more entrepreneurs start their own business or scale their current businesses. So what we do here at Secure Funding is that we'll help you acquire anywhere between $50,000 to $150,000 at 0% interest rate business credit, so that you can, once again, start or scale your current business. So if you come here from our good friend Nelson, there's no that you're coming from the Montana Method Podcast, and we'll take extra good care of you. With that being said, brother, thank you so much for bringing us on.
Of course, of course. What are you waiting for, guys? Click the link in the bio. So a little while ago, not even a little while ago, this was maybe a month ago or a month and a half ago, I did a 3.5 day fast where I didn't eat anything but I only drank water, electrolytes, and some amino acids for 3.5 days.
Look at that.
And it made me realize my own relationship with food. It made me very aware of the times where I'm eating just because I say I want to eat and I'm not actually hungry. It made me more in tune with my body, realizing like, oh, listen, I am hungry. Okay, I am hungry. Okay, so
Yes.
let's eat. And then now it's made me realize, oh, I'm going to eat something. Wait. Hold on, stop. Why do you want to eat this right now? And there's such a psychology behind food.
Sure.
Think about it. It's like it's a social thing, right? So whenever you want to catch up with friends, whenever you want to have a meeting, oh, let's grab lunch. You're probably not even hungry, but you still go to lunch, you still eat something, right? Humans' relationship with food is so interesting, right? It's become, and I talk about this all the time, people who have like some sort of, addiction outside of, drugs or cigarettes or alcohol, that's frowned upon. That's like, no, you shouldn't do that. But bro, what about the people that overeat?
Oh, for sure.
Or undereat, right? You could have
Absolutely.
a bad relationship with food both ways. You could be anorexic, you could have to go that way, or you could be obese, and So food is such an interesting thing to think about because it's not just sustenance at this point. It was in the caveman days, but now it's become like, a way of self, like an art, right?
Yes.
Like cooking most definitely is an art nowadays. It's something to enjoy, something. I love traveling and trying food from other places. That's the best experience in the world, right? Whenever I travel, I try to go to somewhere super local and make them give me like a super local dish, that to me, there's very few things I enjoy more than like traveling and getting to know other cultures. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Yes.
So food is an interesting thing to talk about because there's so many different ways. It's not just about something tasting great or tasting bad or being good for you, not being good for you. It goes beyond that.
Yeah.
It's about a lot of people use it as comfort, as
Definitely.
like somewhere to go when they're not feeling well, when their life is kind of
Sure.
disappointing.
Of
You know,
course.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're aware of like sugar.
Oh, for
Sugar's
sure.
like-
I mean, my kids were made on pequeños croquetas, and I mean,
Yeah.
they're very healthy.
We have a
so-
whole section of food in Miami that's just deep fried. Everything is fried, everything. We get some ham paste, throw it in there, boom, you got a croqueta. And
There you go.
that's a food group for us, so.
Yeah. I mean, even then the addiction side of that, in terms of even breaking addictions and things like that, they say that in order to get rid of a bad habit, you need to replace
Replace it with a good one, yeah.
with a good habit. And definitely, I mean, even in the food, in terms of the quality of food as well, I think it's very interesting when restaurants focus on the locally sourced type of ingredients and things like that. That's something that in
today's age is becoming more and more of a
more
common
prominent.
theme. Yeah.
I've heard actually from the South Dade Chamber of Commerce, which is around the Gould, Homestead type of area. There's a lot of now rental properties where you can host events and farms. And apparently, this was maybe a year and a half ago, I heard almost making that almost like a Napa Valley type of
Interesting.
experience here in Miami.
Which makes sense because of how much the city's grown, right? So
That we could have that kind of local farming element brought, being able to have more of that in the surrounding areas. But yeah, what about the cost of that as well, right? So everything is is subjective to business, to, you know, the economy. But being able to have more of those programs would be great. And yeah, you know, in terms of working with Chamber of Commerce groups and even being able to use platforms for what's the idea, you know, of influencing people.
Right.
Anything that anybody shares online influences somebody. You know, people say, you know, influencers, and a lot of times it's this majority of likes and all these things. But I mean, more than ever, we have millions of messages that we're receiving.
Information travels at an insane rate nowadays.
You know,
You know what I think is funny? When people say the world is the worst it's ever been. Really? We're worse off than in Roman times when people used to kill each other for fun in the Colosseum? We're worse than that? Or how about when the Mongolians scavenged across Asia and killed millions of people just to say, oh, we're the Mongolian Empire? Or
right.
how about when the Vikings were around and they went into England and destroyed a whole country just to, like, what are you guys talking about? This
Yeah.
is the best time to be alive.
There you go.
100%. Now, the difference is when someone died in Japan back then, no one in Europe found out for probably 10 years, you know? Whereas now I could be in the United States and someone could get murdered in Australia and I'll find out within an hour or less. I'll find out within minutes, right? So the rate in which information travels is what mainly gives this false perception of, oh my God, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Listen, bro, the world's been in a much worse situation than it is right now.
Yeah.
And this is the best time to be alive. 100%.
I agree with
You
you.
can ask any one of our ancestors, any period where you think, oh my God, yeah, that was like the golden age of humanity. Yeah, okay, sure.
Right.
You know, so
And that's the idea, you know, being that the social media has flipped the script.
150%.
You know, now everybody can be a media
Yeah,
presence.
yeah.
That's
Everyone
what
has
it
a
is.
voice.
You know, and that's the balance also between having, you know, focusing on just the fluff,
Mm.
you know, but also being able to share things that are important to your values and to the world, you know, and thinking on a global scale, you know, even in business. You know, a business is, okay, you're here in Miami and you talk about the market, but, you know, how do you now, social media puts you in that global
Right.
market,
Right.
right? And so how do you want to show up in that global space?
Mm.
You know, oh, okay, you're a you're a bakery, right?
Mm.
And so you're a Cuban bakery, okay? So, but how are you representing that on a global level,
Right.
not just in Miami? Because I firmly believe in the market, there's room for everybody to win,
Mhm.
you know? And I even like to say, you know, it's even if you're competing in the same sector, for example, hamburgers, you know,
I mean, how many burger spots do we know of that are awesome? You know?
awesome,
Yeah.
you know, but it just depends. Are you in the area, you know? And but there's room for
Is it fusion? Is it like classic American burgers? Is it this? There's so many different ways. Going back to something you just said, I think it's so funny. There is room for everybody to win. It's just that we're like this scarcity and this fear mongering is put into us, and we buy into this message of scarcity. And in reality, there's enough of any resource you can imagine on the planet for everybody. There's more than enough money for everybody. There's more than enough. So I think it's funny how when people compete with each other, you should be competing to get better, in my opinion, right? Like compete with each other to get better. That's what competition really is for. It's to force you to be the best you can in order to win. It's not to stomp on other people. It's not to slit other people's throats.
exactly.
You know, did you ever watch The Founder? No.
Yes, McDonald's.
Listen, I admire what he did with that company, right? Like, cause I'm a pure entrepreneur at heart. So Ray Kroc obviously is a legendary entrepreneur. However, and this is a big, you know, caveat, bro, what he did to certain people in that movie was just like, dude, yo, way over the top.
Yeah.
Way over the top.
Yeah.
Was that necessary? You know, it is what it is.
right?
You know,
I mean, there's a McDonald's on every corner in the country, and
Exactly.
when you see a McDonald's in another city in the world,
100%.
we were able to travel once to Cambodia, and
Really?
yes, that was
Interesting.
neat, very neat. I mean, we definitely lost weight over there. And Thailand as well.
Man, it's my dream to go there.
It's a
Thailand.
great experience.
What part did you go to? Bangkok?
Yes.
Phuket?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And I mean, I remember them serving us. We were able to go. Our tour guide actually took us for a very authentic meal at his home.
Wow.
With
That is so cool.
It was very neat. And his mom made us a beautiful meal. And so she made us very interesting a fricassee, right?
Fricassee, like what we eat?
Fricassee,
Okay, okay.
but it was a frog fricassee.
So instead of chicken or beef, it was like
was
frog.
It was frog.
Interesting. Okay.
There's very little bones in the mix,
yeah.
and
They eat frog like it's chicken over there?
I guess so. I mean, you know, you go here. Oh, I'm gonna go to a Thai restaurant. I'm gonna have a curry, my favorite Penang curry,
Pad
for
Thai,
example.
you know.
Yeah, pad Thai.
Thai donuts, all that.
Yeah, I mean that's Americanized. It's not like that over there.
That's so funny how we do that in this country. It's the same thing with Chinese food,
Yeah.
right? By the way, I've tried the Chinese food across the country. The best Chinese food is in Miami.
Hey,
I don't care what. Yo, New York, yeah, not happening. Not New York, not Chicago, not LA. We own all you guys. This is the best Chinese food in the entire country.
I gotta know what Chinese place you're going to.
The Cuban Chinese, bro. Are you
Oh,
kidding me? Come
really?
on, of
No
course. You
kidding.
don't know about that backstory?
No.
Ooh, all right. This is gonna be a great clip.
Hey.
Check this out. So long ago, there was a wave of Cuban, into Cuba, there was a wave of Chinese immigrants. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there's two languages in China. There's Mandarin and Cantonese. The majority of the country speaks Mandarin now. Cantonese isn't really a thing outside of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is really the only city that speaks Cantonese. For context, just so you understand, Bruce Lee was Cantonese. So that's the language he spoke.
I know New Canton.
Right. So that canton, the Cantonese, there was a big wave of Cantonese immigrants that moved to Cuba. And they owned a whole neighborhood in La Habana.
Okay.
And the cross streets were Dragones y Zanja. Was it Zanja y Dragones? Dragones y Espada. I think Zanja y Dragones is like the
eso.
cross street. Dragons and I don't know how to say Zanja in English. Dragon Street. So, and it was like amazing. The food. Apparently back then, obviously I wasn't awakened. I
So
wasn't
so
around
the
in the
Chinese
50s.
always establish a Chinatown wherever they
Wherever
go.
they go.
That's
So
good to know.
then you had the mixing of cultures. Then you have, which I'm sure you're aware of, you have the Chinese Cubans. You know, it'd be Chinese people that moved to Cuba, had kids in Cuba, and the kid was Cuban because he's born in Cuba. He speaks Spanish like a Cuban. He's born in Cuba.
Actually know of one gentleman. He's un pastelero for many years. Y todo el mundo lo llaman el chino.
El Chino, yeah.
And
And he
I
looks
didn't
Chinese.
realize that.
He looks Asian, but he's Cuban.
Mira eso.
That's the backstory. So their cuisine was like off the chain. They kind of mixed, So I actually in my family, I have extended family. I had a gentleman that we used to call Canton. His real name was Eliodoro, but his nickname, the Cubans always giving nicknames, Canton. That's what we all called him, El Chino or whatever. And his kids ended up being like older siblings of mine. So my cousin Louis, my cousin Yesenia, my cousin Adrian, my cousin Damien. So he was like Cuban, spoke Spanish like a Cuban, but he spoke Chinese. So he opened a restaurant here in Little Havana that was open for many years. It's not around anymore. Called El Gran Shanghai, right? So it was Cuban Chinese. Like if you wanted fried rice, you could order fried rice. But if you wanted un pan con bistec, you could order a pan con bistec.
Mira eso.
Legendary spot. He owned it for like 30 years until the day he died.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So there you
Maybe
go.
the family could bring it back somehow.
Maybe.
You know, the only association I have with Latin American culture and Chinese is the Peruvian culture. Chifa.
So there you go. That's a whole nother mixing of like Hispanic and Asian culture. They had a huge Japanese wave that moved there early in the 20th century, around the 1920s, 1930s, around there, and that heavily influenced Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu came from Asia.
Look at that.
That
I took
went into-
jiu-jitsu when I was younger.
There you go. So that's how Brazilian jiu-jitsu started, because the Japanese brought jiu-jitsu over, and then the Brazilians kind of like turned it into their own thing. And then if you notice, there's a lot of Asian-looking Peruvians, and there's a lot of Asian influence in Peruvian food. That's where that comes from. There was a huge Japanese influx
sure.
of immigrants into South America a long time ago. And that's how it all, they have their own version of sushi, chifa, which is their own version of fried rice. They use a lot of fish, just like Japanese people.
Sure.
Like, yeah, that's a whole nother, there you go, little history
No,
lesson.
and I mean, definitely, actually, in the family business, Cuban bakery, we have a sandwich. It's a churrasco special. It's one of the best sellers, and it actually has soy sauce
There you go.
in the recipe. And I'm like, but what is soy sauce doing in a Cuban bakery? Like, just no, does not make any sense, but that's the secret ingredient.
There you go. Yeah, so it's and like that. There's stories like that in Cuba of all kinds of groups of people. There's a whole backstory of a big group of Jewish people during World War II. I actually wrote a paper about this in school. There was a huge ship of Jewish immigrants that fled Europe in a ship, and they went to Cuba, and Cuba wouldn't let them off the ship. Like, they were docked there for weeks, and they wouldn't let them off the ship. And then they sent that. I don't know how many of them stayed and how many of them got sent back, but that was a whole backstory of like Jewish people that live in Cuba. There's a whole Jewish community in Cuba.
Right.
Yeah, that's cute.
No, and I
very
mean,
interesting.
just, talking about Cuba and the reason how we found each other online, our mutual friend, Spanglish Generation. She is, I mean, always advocating for the Cuban culture.
Of course.
And, I mean, just even, imagining what my grandparents went through, so many years ago. It's painful. The other day I was at my grandmother's house, and she was giving me as many clothes that she could, and with the tags on it, and she would just, and she does that with all of her grandkids, and it's the sweetest thing, and just seeing interesting things that they do. She had like frozen parsley in the freezer. She had parsley in the freezer in a container, like a container de yogur, empty, que lo
Bro,
lavaron, y eso es lo que usan.
them with keeping the empty bottles and the empty cups of everything. No, yo puedo usar eso. I can use this. It's like, dude, abuela, we don't have to do that here. You can go to Walmart and buy that for $5.
Right?
We can get some Tupperware.
Exactly.
But they come from having to figure out how to survive.
Of course.
So,
and I mean,
everything was precious.
it was
Everything, because you never knew when was your next chance to get something like that. Whether it was a container, whether it was a shirt, whether it was a pair of socks,
Sure.
Whether it was a cup. You just
Yeah.
didn't know, so they had to make do with things like that,
Exactly.
To this day, they, I've gone to visit my family in Cuba, and you'll see it, they keep things in like, it's like, bro, a macaroni and cheese box? Like, what do you, but no, yo uso esto para guardar, I use this to put stuff away, and it's like, wow.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and the thing is that, I mean, our age, early 30s, possibly. And
Good guess.
yeah, I mean, I'm 29, so I'm not there yet, but I'm excited. It'll be a good year. But they were there around this time.
Yeah.
And that's a majority of your life and into your adulthood. So those habits are already there.
100%.
And then all these years here in America, and entrepreneurial spirit that they brought here because they had no other option as
100%.
well. And so, it's definitely important having the privilege to live here in this country, being able to now with social media, you're able to monetize on your passion projects, with the freedom of technology. That wasn't their
Available back
case,
then,
but still, keeping those roots true to now this generation, you know, and our presence online, you know, not being afraid to, because, oh, you lose followers or whatever, and keep your voice quiet because then you have to hyper niche and things like that, you know, and those are the things that happen in the big media, you know, those are the things that, you know, why they don't share certain things here, certain things there. But, you know, we have that in our own hands now, these tools. And now your page is your own rules of how you relate to that.
Right.
And, you know, so being able to follow those hobbies, but still be able to have a platform to share things that are important to you because of things in our country and, you know, trying to be non-biased in those elements, but creating conversations.
Something funny enough that I've touched up on before. What happens as a result of that is you see people get censored, you see people get canceled because of something they said that offended somebody. So somebody within a position of authority decides that they shouldn't have the right to say anything anymore. So they get canceled, they get deplatformed, you know, all that stuff happens. So what happens is, even in the event where that gets rectified and the person who did that to that person, like, has to answer for what they did, for taking away this person's freedom of speech, what happens is, now the next round of content creators that's talking, you don't even have to tell them to, oh, shut up or we're going to silence you. That doesn't happen. They censor themselves.
Exactly.
Now what's happened is, because I don't know if anybody's noticed, but the stuff I see on Instagram now would not have flown 3 years ago. It wouldn't. Like, it would have gotten, you know, taken down. The person's account probably would have gotten like canceled, all that stuff. Now you're seeing some pretty loose stuff, right?
Well, that's the thing. Why can all of those negative messages be shared without, you know, without even having the consciousness that, you know, they shouldn't do that, but they do, but then sharing important, valuable information that should be discussed isn't shared.
No, 100%. And what part of the problem is, the people that have enough sense to say the right thing and have a good message don't want to talk about controversial topics anymore.
Exactly.
They censor themselves. You don't even have to tell them, hey, shut up or there's going to be consequences. They do it to themselves for fear of missing out on income, for fear of losing their platform, for fear of, you know, XYZ, fill in the blank.
Absolutely.
So it's become a real thing in the United States nowadays, where content creators and people who speak, who have a platform, they watch what they say and they stay away from topics that otherwise they would have talked about 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. But because of everything that's happened over the last few years with cancel culture, it's a real thing. They choose not to talk about things. They censor themselves.
Exactly. And hyper niching, you know, like if we aren't so diverse in so many ways, but oh no, you focus on food, that's all you can focus on.
Right.
You know, and so you set up your page and however you want to monetize, you know, that being the case, but it all depends, you know, what are your values, what are your goals, you know, what are those messages that you want the people around you to consider, you know, and that personal censoring, you know, it's I find when other people really share their true opinions, I find that so strong and courageous, you know, and regardless if it's opposite of from what I am looking for, the idea is to have more conversation.
Agreed.
So that we can find that we have more common ground than opposites. And you know, a lot of it is based on fear, based on lack of knowledge and
100%.
lack of facts. You know, recently the primaries took place August 20th, and I didn't see any information about the primaries and go vote.
It's crazy because I've interviewed, throughout between January and March, I interviewed 3 sheriff's candidates that were running for Miami-Dade County Sheriff. I didn't find out there was an election for Miami-Dade County Sheriff, or that we were electing a sheriff until January of this year, which is crazy. And every time I talked to anybody and I brought it up, no one knew it was happening.
Exactly.
So it goes to show
Taco
you,
Tuesday and National Ice Cream
woof,
Day is
in your face.
all over the place.
Yep.
And it's almost like, regardless of having differences in opinions, even being able to go online and see all of the facts in an easily comparable way between the different representatives. I mean, on August 20 elections, it was very difficult to find information about the people running for mayor, for example. It was there was no place where it was very clear. And even now with the new elections that are happening now in November, very important time for our country. And being able to know as Americans, what are these important topics that we need to be aware about, because we're maybe focusing on 2 or 3 that are the most controversial. And that's what takes up the entire conversation. But what about all those other topics, and being able to easily compare?
Agreed.
I did a campaign 2 years ago in the midterm elections at the bakeries in a very non-partisan way. It was just educating people that you have a lot more access to representatives that can make those differences than you think. You have your district, let's say the area of Doral, and that person has their representative. And that person is going to represent that area, and they do meet and greets around town. You can talk to them one-on-one, and you can share with them, look, I'm concerned about this, that.
I'm convinced.
They're your advocates.
Yeah. I'm convinced at this point that things don't change, not because it's hard or it's difficult. Things don't change because no one shows up. Everyone buys into the story that things are difficult to change, or things are difficult to, like, it's difficult to present new things or get to the decision maker. But in reality, everyone just tells themselves that, and no one shows up.
Exactly.
They don't show up to these people's offices.
Right.
Trying to, hey, listen, there's a friggin' pothole in my neighborhood that's been there for 2 months, bro. Like, what's up?
Sure.
Everybody's just like, oh no, the city's not gonna do it.
Right.
And no one tries.
Exactly.
So it's amazing how we really do have a system to an extent to where if you want something done, you can access the people that have the power to make the decision about it.
Yes.
It's just we've bought into the lie that we tell ourselves that, no, it's too difficult.
It's too difficult. It's not going to make a difference. We're not going to
Exactly.
be able to get through to them.
Right.
They're right there. They're your local people. They're
Yeah.
representing your community. That is
100%.
their job, to represent you.
Yeah.
That's why you vote for them for your area.
100%.
And then so the midterm elections were for the Florida House of Representatives and the Florida Senate. And the House of Representatives is made up of 120 members. The Senate is made up of 40 members. And then 27 members go to the U.S. Congress and represent in Washington, D.C. And I had the privilege when I was younger to go to a program by the American Auxiliary, the American Legion Girl State. And I was able to be in the state capital of Tallahassee as a senator in the forum amongst other girls, and we submitted bills. We proposed bills. I proposed a bill, for example, the traffic light, the yellow light to have a countdown of number within the circle, because sometimes it's a different amount of time that the yellow light, sometimes the yellow light is 1 second, another time it's 7 seconds.
Right.
And, that could, so that was an interesting process that I was able to experience in my youth. And I was able to see firsthand how the government process works. And,
Right.
So there's great capacity for us to be able to influence our representatives locally. They go to the Florida Capitol, represent that at a state level. And from there, that influence also even goes to, the country's capital, Washington, D.C. So it's possible. It's very possible. And it's just being able to have more knowledge, being able to have more conversations, and being able to see the facts. It shouldn't be so difficult if you're running for office. Like, okay, there's 10 boxes. These are the different topics. And I affiliate with this, I affiliate with that, I affiliate with that, and that. And you could be able to compare in an easy way.
There's
It's not structured that way.
You remind me of something I read about a long time ago. In ancient Greece, only a certain demographic of people were allowed to vote. Now, why were only those certain demographic of people allowed to vote? Only typically, it wasn't specifically these people, but you only saw rich upper class males vote. Why? Typically, they were the only ones who could afford education. And the prerequisite in order to vote was you had to be educated. You had to understand what you were voting on and what the person was proposing in order to vote. They didn't just let anybody vote. Now, I think part of the issue today is not that everybody shouldn't have the right to vote. Everybody should have the right to vote. But everybody should also have knowledge on what they're voting on and who they're voting for.
Exactly.
Most people vote out of emotion, which is a problem and why we're in the state we're in today. Oh, I hate this candidate, so I'm not going to vote for him. I'm going to vote for whoever's running against him. Oh, yeah, that's a great strategy. What about what the other person stands for? What about what the other person is talking about? What about what the other person is proposing? That doesn't matter? You're just going to vote for them because you hate the other person? So there's a level of knowledge and basic understanding that you have to have in order to vote, and that doesn't exist nowadays. And it's funny how, you know, even that democracy back then, it was like considered the golden age of Greece, 100 years of democracy. It ended up ultimately falling apart because it's not so much our democracy that holds us kind of where we are. It's more the fact that we're a republic, you know?
There you go.
If we're a democracy, it's kind of just mob rule. If the majority of people want to, you know, oh, we don't want the United States to be a country anymore. Let's just dissolve the United States. Mob rule is 51% wanting that.
Right.
Sometimes that's not really the smartest decision because, again, what information are we being given?
But that's the point.
Are people being manipulated with the information they're being given?
Of
You know, so
course.
it's like,
And that's exactly it. The republic, right? That's what the United States of America is, you know? The republic for which it stands, one nation under God, you know? And our laws are based on the Constitution. And that's what basically should be guiding all of our legal representatives, you know? And so it's that's the idea, to preserve that of this country that is one of the newest countries in the world.
right.
It hasn't been around the same as all of, you know, Europe and China and, you know, the empires
other countries, of
rise and
course, yeah.
fall, you know. But how can we preserve our country, you know, and what the founding fathers created, right? And President George Washington, he being the first president, he was the one that decided, you know, 2 terms and that's it. I'm, you know, next person. Because the idea is not to be a monarchy, you know, and to be a revolving continuation of the people, you know. And so it's just Americans being able to be more conscious of what they want for themselves, for their securities, and regardless of party, being able to really know all of the facts.
Right.
You know, and it's just so difficult to really see that information anywhere. It's just,
And it makes you think, is that on purpose? You know?
right.
So, alrighty, guys. We're going to take a quick break, hear from our second sponsor, and then we'll come back to wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, the familiar voice of your host, Nelson Rodriguez Jr., taking a quick detour to talk to you about the best jewelry shop on the internet, Gus Villa Jewelry. Let's be honest here, guys. Jewelers in Miami are super shady sometimes. I've even been ripped off once or twice by one of these self-proclaimed alchemists that ended up being these weirdos who sell you a bunch of stuff that make your neck and your fingers turn black. Let me tell you, after I met my boy, Gus Villa, he elevated my bling game. The Gus Villa team, these guys are more than just jewelers. These guys are magicians, turning metal and stone into your next head turner. Trust me, these pieces shine so much you can see them from outer space. Head over to GusVillaJewelry.com, and because you're a Monty, that's right, part of the Montana Method crew, you can use the promo code Montana to snatch 5% off your order. You don't just get hooked up with some shine, you get to have some dough in your pocket. Double whammy. So guys, what are you waiting for? Elevate your jewelry game. Show the world what you got. You got some style, you got some bling, you're all blinged up. Come on back after you do that. We've got more Montana Method madness waiting for you. Now back to the podcast. So, Victoria, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nelson.
Of course. I always wrap up with the same 3 questions. So,
Okay.
question number 1 is
Yes.
what inspires you?
What inspires me? My family.
Mm.
I'm doing this for my children and for us to have the privileges that are in this modern age, and also for my roots, honoring my parents, my grandparents, and the sacrifices they've made for the life we have today.
That's a big one for me. I used to be able to sit with my grandfathers and just listen to them all day. I love hanging around like older people because they always have some really cool stories to tell you. You know, we'd sit around and play dominoes, or I'd go eat lunch with them or go to their house and just hang out with them.
Yeah.
And they just had an endless amount of cool stories from their childhood or from when they were younger or from when they used to babysit me as a kid. And that's ultimately, I've kind of figured out, like, with that wisdom. You know, that's what life, wisdom makes your life so rich.
Yes.
It makes it a special experience. So that's really why I started the podcast. I wanted to find wisdom like that from wherever I could and share it with everybody. Ultimately, those cool conversations I used to have with like my grandparents or those older wise people. Yeah. I was like, man, I wish people could have heard this. Exactly. You know, it turned into this. So.
And now we're sharing those stories.
Yep. Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, you've done that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's just having the courage to say this is important for me.
100%.
And if it's important for me, it's necessary.
For sure. Couldn't agree more. Second question, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Going to have lunch.
Like immediately. What's next? Let's go have lunch. All right. What are you gonna eat?
No idea. Still don't know.
Up in the air.
Let's see.
All right. I'm sure it'll taste great.
Yes.
Third question, how do you want to be remembered?
How do I want to be remembered? For overcoming challenges and through that having through that grace, being able to experience victories.
I love that. Victoria, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll do a part 2 sometime.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
I gotta come see you guys. I'll check you guys out.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Sounds like fun. Alrighty, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Another episode of Montana Method Podcast with special guest Victoria. Push it to the limit. The world is yours. If you're not chasing a dream, life is meaningless, guys. Catch you on the next one. Say goodnight to the bad guy.
I've been out here hustling all my life. Every day we get into it. Really out here in these streets. That's day and night. Like there's nothing to it. When I was going through it, dog, I never got your call. I never asked for nothing, no. But now I want it all. I promise I'ma do it. Came from rags to riches. Rags to riches. Came from rags to riches. Rags to riches. Came from rags.